one oftentimes takes on that responsibility. And of course, there's going to be some hard feelings toward the others who aren't doing anything. But then you have those children who are not doing anything, who are like, well, I'm not going to get in the way. You've got it all under control. Why should I get involved? Why should I do this? So it's a nice perspective on the different, roles that people play when it comes to an ailing parent. And to be quite honest, there's not a lot of things about this movie that isn't unreal, realistic. A lot of it's very realistic. So kudos to how it is set up.
And they didn't make it so candy coating. Remember when Meg Ryan wanted to find mom because they had split? Of course, Leachman, who I have to say, I always found her, she's funny. She's a great comedian, but she played this role so well, drama, like a tough mom. Like she was tough. And that aspect of going to mom who had split from dad and saying, hey, just going to know that dad's not well. And in a typical movie, she'd be like, oh, bygones are bygones. How can I help? She was just like, well, you know what? I honestly didn't even want to, she said, I didn't want to be a mom. And she was more involved than me. And so, thanks for the info, but I'm not doing much. And I was thinking interesting twist. And I'm sure that happens, right? Yes. That definitely happened. That was pretty realistic. I gave him a lot of credit for this. I enjoyed the movie, and you're right, Chris. It was pretty realistic. I'm giving it on the realistic factor. It was like an 8. It was pretty good. Very realistic of what could happen.
Absolutely. And what can we really glean from this, right? In this particular movie, I think there was a certain point where they were trying to get dad to sign a blank check for his care because he wasn't, in that particular moment, they were afraid that if he needed to get some care, they wouldn't be able to access his accounts, right? That to me was like, oh, look at that estate planning aspect that we can talk about. And, for that particular situation, Chris, what do you think would have been a good solution for dad?
So I think one of the things that always has to happen with families is, we say it's easy, but when life goes on, we forget, but there has to be communication with the siblings somehow, some way of a plan saying, okay, he's getting older, it would be nice for someone to say, hey, listen, it's not fair for you, Meg Ryan, to be doing doing everything. So let's try to figure out some way to alternate, so make sure no one's 100% burdened, and that is something that has to be with the siblings. But for father, there's things called long-term care insurance. I mean, they've evolved over the years. Originally they were, kind of like a one and done type of insurance, right, Chris, where you get the insurance and you'll say, this will pay for any of my long-term care medical needs. But if I don't need it, well, then that insurance is done. It's not going to be used. So it was very expensive. And a lot of people didn't like that feeling, but they've evolved over the years. Again, I'm not saying they're cheaper, but you can have more uses where if you don't use that type of insurance, it can be converted to a life insurance policy, or it can be used for home care things. So I really think, today we really encourage a lot of people, look into your long-term care insurance needs, because that's a tool that could really help out the family financially. Because maybe Meg Ryan could have had someone help her. She could have had people at the house, so she's not running herself ragged, or what we have, right, Chris, and some people stopping work because they have to be with their parent, so that's one solution I'm thinking, Chris,
and in this particular situation too, when I'm seeing him refuse to sign a check, somebody should have been power of attorney for dad as he was getting older too, because if God forbid he did, he really was in a situation where he couldn't even, manage his own affairs, there should have been one of the kids, should have at least had there should have been at least a document that dad prepared saying, well, if I lose my ability to manage my own affairs during my lifetime, I nominate one of my children, Meg Ryan or Diane Keaton, or even or Lisa Kudrow, in that sense, but they could have been able to manage his finances even while he was alive. Many